Welcome to Late Night Gaming. I'm Poem. I'm with Rufus McDoofus and our very special guest today, Magog. There's some number. There's some numbers at the end of Magog, right? What do we got? Magog 2, Magog,
Tw- 29.
Magog 29. Okay. And I am so very excited to do this installment of our off meta series with Magog. Obviously, to me, this guy is already just a legend at this point for just making top 8 with the Old Han. Just so very impressed with that. So super good job there. Um, yeah, so again, just real quick, the off meta series. This is like it's sort of like a winner circle for people that bring their home brews and whatnot. Um, playing with off meta leaders and do well at tournaments. It could be not necessarily this high of level of competition, but PQs and that kind of stuff. So Magog, Rufus has our first question for you, and thanks again for coming
Sure.
on.
Tell us a little bit about the hum for Tarkintown Deck.
We can go back a little bit. I was actually on Han 2 Blue before it was cool at the Duluth PQ. I had been testing that for a bit. I liked the combination of the rebellious Hammerhead into the Luke Skywalker, and I thought, okay, that's really great. And I had put a lot of time. I went down there and I just absolutely crashed and burned. It was a miserable performance. I was very disheartened by the whole thing. You put a lot of time and effort. You think you got the meta figured out. You like where you are, and it didn't work. And I just could not bring myself to do Han 2, even though that was supposedly the best deck. So I immediately started figuring out how I was going to counter that. And very on into the play testing, I decided there was two lines of play that were optimal. Either you figured out how to ambush Vader, the new Vader, what's it, Twilight of the Apprentice, or you just hung out in space and you lane dodged everybody and you crushed up there. I can go really deep into that, but it
Yeah.
starts back with Kazuda, Kazuda Red, Thermal Oscillator, Kazuda. Really loved that. Did pretty good at a Knoxville PQ with it. Finished 12th. Lost my winning in to original Han, which is an abysmal matchup because they're always like, "Oh, look at this! This is the Millennium Falcon on turn one. How do you feel about that?" And you're like, "I feel miserable." And you just deal with it. So I had done really well because I had beat the other two Han 1 players I had played, not expecting that much of the meta up there to be that. So I was feeling really good until my hopes were crushed and dashed. And I really couldn't draw at the time. Tie breaks weren't good enough. And yeah, well, it is what it is. But I went back to that list because I thought, space is where I wanted to be. And from there, it morphed back and forth. And I really keyed in on Tarkintown being a base I wanted because it really gave me some quick answers to some of the problems in the meta while allowing me to just do my space stuff. Went back to Vader 4, liked some of the Vader 4 stuff, didn't like exactly where it was at. And somebody had sent me a podcast, and I'm sorry, whichever podcast it was, I'm so sorry. But they joked that it was like somebody dropped the Kazuda Red and the Vader 4 deck on the floor and picked it up and said, "Oh, I'm just going to play this." And that's what they called my deck. And hilarious enough, the amount of testing between those two decks that led to that was I wanted to comment. I lost the thread, and I hope I find it again. I've been looking for it all day, trying to find it so I could comment. It's like, you guys are so close to right, you don't even know it. But that's how we ended up on Han 4. I really liked how he could play a very aggressive early game, had a very powerful flip turn, very reminiscent of Boba 1 flip turn there. But also, you had the control aspects. You had that Sanctioneer shuttle that you could use, and it just led to lines that I really liked in the format. And the more I played it against just every random deck that I could find, against the decks I expected, it was performing at a very high level. Now, I didn't have Kylo 5 Tarkintown with Migs in there to test against. Maybe I should have because that felt abysmal. But everything else felt great. And sprinting out to a 6-0 to start day two was just a great feeling. It's like, oh man, I'm day three. Well, here you know.
Man, again, just what an incredible run, and we're gonna definitely want to hear more about that run as well. But just before we get to that, like, how do you the way I want to phrase this is, what's the win condition of this deck? Basically, how if you're able to do this certain line or you get this certain interaction, you're gonna win. Like, what is your main like play like pattern that's gonna get you to a victory?
So you have you have a couple of optimal lines there. First of all, you have 2/1 drops in space, right? That'll get you a whole lot of lines open up from that. You also have the C3PO start where you use Han's ability, you reveal it, and C3PO just draws you a card automatically. Certain matchups, one line is better than another. Also, depending on how the opponent's playing against you game one. Now, it being open deck list, which nobody expected, changed some of the dynamics a little bit, but it still played the way I wanted it to play, and there wasn't a whole lot that I felt like my opponents could do about it. I knew what they were doing. I didn't feel like they knew what I was doing, and so I could capitalize upon knowing which line was correct and pushing pressure, and then having them going, "Oh, how do I react to that? How do I respond to that? Oh my God, how did his board get that big? And why is he doing all these things to me? How am I supposed to win this game?" I felt like I could see that look every time I flipped Han and readied all 5 resources. So
I think that's the answer, right? Like,
Hmm.
if that happens, like, it's that just has to be good. Like, that just, I mean, I personally was on not on the red. Like, I didn't solve this deck like you did. Like, I was trying to do some yellow stuff, but like, my mind was totally on this guy. I didn't get to go to Galactics, but I was like, this. I mean, 5 free resources that early in the game just has to be good. It's
it
so
is a
cool.
very explosive potential there. And in your defense, I think you might have been closer than you thought. There was a lot of late country games versions of this. There was a lot of double yellow versions. I am a big fan of the um, Naboot Village. I don't know how it's pronounced, but the one where you get the opening 9 cards. You
Hmm.
don't get the mulligan, but you have the opening 9 cards. I mean, because for my testing with that, every time I play double yellow, that's one of the first bases I look at because I really like that 9 card hand. Um, but ultimately, the Tarkintown proved to be important, and it opened up a couple of extra cards that proved to be key, such as Cassian Andor, Poe, and the Daring Raids. And then, of course, you got the Tarkintown base. Added bonus that just came along the way when I was like, man, there's just some other way to continue pushing the 1 drops was the cracked V shot. And so that's about how we got to the list.
All right, and we'll get into
Pretty
some
cool.
more details on that list a little bit later. Um, Rufus, are you ready for that next question?
Yeah, yeah. Can you walk us a little through your Galactic Championship run?
So it started on day one in a galaxy far, far away. Yeah, I started with that. I was expecting to see a lot of Han, which is it's not a bad matchup, but sometimes you don't feel like you're in control based on how good their opening draw is, which is a horrible feeling to have. But I also found when I was playing that matchup early on that if they didn't have that optimal perfect draw, it wasn't a bad matchup. I really could hang in there and create a lot of problems for them. And so to start day one, my very first opponent, Han Blue, Grogu, both games. Not only that, they're
Mm.
playing entrenched, so Jam Communications misses the entrenched. It's Grogu into double entrenched both games, and I just get raffle stomped. It was wonderful opening. I was really dejected to start that first game. I thought, well,
That's rough.
okay, well, there's going to be other things to do, so let's go get ready to use these side event tokens. Only need to lose 2 more, and it'll be okay. But then it was play Emperor Palpatine on Colossus, which I had played surprising amounts of Emperor Palpatine, and I hadn't lost a single one. A single one. That was a matchup that just I loved to death. Now I did have that one on round 3 or day 3, round 9, I think it was. He had the legacy runs in there, which I could not remember during the interview. Couldn't remember the name of that card to save my life. But it was the legacy runs, and I thought, now that's a good addition. So I was a little worried about that one. He didn't draw him, so that matchup turned out fine. But on day one, it just turns into that's a good matchup. Then it's another good matchup, which if meant to bring my life pad out and take a look at it. I want to say it wasn't a Han yet because I was still feeling the reeling from that first Han. I thought, man, they're just going to draw great. It's going to be the end of the day. Man, I just cannot remember. But it started out, it went from that one loss into 4 wins. And then I had another Han Blue player. And I win the first one. It starts out great. I'm like, yes, this is the way it's supposed to play. And then I get an opening hand that's like double Plo Koon, double Poe, a Daring Raid, and a Never Tell Me the Odds. All right, I'll ship it back. Open the hand again, and it's like the same 6 cards. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's going to be one of those games. I tried to stay in that one, but he had a really good draw, and Han Blue did what Han Blue does. And then we played a third game, and it was just another optimal game. And I was like, okay, well, there's the second loss. So we're 4-2. We just got to win the last 2. And my next opponent is Han Green, which is infinitely scarier for my version than Han Blue. Because the blue leaders, if they got the pose, then they had the force throws where if I manage to put together a Voltron spaceship, they'll just throw a crap dragon at it. And we just played back and forth games, and there was one play in the third game that, made the difference for me, made my whole weekend difference. I have a loaded up Falcon, second set Falcon. It's got double Han on it, and it's got 3 damage from where he played a bombing run, which is surprisingly most of the time not that great against me if I'm, able to play around it, set it up, because I got my ship's got some toughness to him. And it's got that 3 damage, and he draws for the turn. He looks, he's kind of looking at the board a little bit, and he goes, disabling Fang Fighter. And I thought, oh, didn't draw the force throw and something to force throw at it. So he disabling Fang's Fighter, the pilot Han, my leader, off of there. And I'm like, okay, well, I get a swing in, and then I have a couple of other ships, so I'm able to get lethal because of it. And his friend goes, why didn't you just force throw the crack dragon at the ship? And his friend's like, it doesn't kill it, man. Look, it's got all that toughness on it. And his friend's like, didn't you bombing run the turn before? And I could never do that to one of my friends. Like he might as well took him out behind the woodshed, put the gun outside his head, and said, yeah, we were used to be friends. I mean,
That
I felt bad for the guy.
that was the difference between day 1 and day 2 for you. It sounds like,
Well,
possibly.
I mean, I still had some lines. It would
Yeah.
have been very close and a lot closer, but because I got that extra swing with the Falcon, all of a sudden I didn't have to worry about which line was needed because he hadn't force thrown me that third game at all. And I thought any moment now he's going to draw that force throw. He's going to have something fat in his hand like a Yoda, Belleron, a Crap Dragon, and that it's going to really swing the game back in his favor, and it's going to be just right there up to the last moment. Can I eke out all the damage I need to? And so he missed on that. And then the last round was a Kira Data Vault, and I love every version of Data Vault. I don't care if you're Kira, Ryla, Kylo, whatever. My stats against that are really good. So um, that was day 1 in a nutshell. I was super relieved to have made it that far. And then day 2 started off with a bang.
Yeah, I mean, take us through day 2 and day 3, man. Like we want to hear
Yeah.
about it. Like, how did you what happened out there? Like this, everyone
So
wants to know. Like,
I guess so. Inquiring minds, right? So day 2 starts off with, I believe it was Stevie, I believe his name, from KTOD. He's on Kylo Data Vault. Now here's the open deck list. And I thought, well, here goes my element of surprise. But I get the same thing. So I get to see his list, and I notice there's only 2 overwhelming barrages and only 1 no guts, no glory. And out of the whole weekend, the only time I ended up bringing those Chewbacca's in was for his matchup. Did I have to use them? No. But they were, that was one of the few matchups where I thought, man, this is going to be fantastic. Now, if I remember correctly, he had another no guts, no glory, or no glory only results. I keep mixing these card names up. I think he had another one in his board, but the cards that I really look for, he was very small on it. It really feel like he was designed to beat the other control decks, win those other
Mm.
control matches, the other blue-green villainies, which I expected a larger share than what I got. I mean, I played some, but I didn't play as much as I thought I would play. And game 1, I'm setting up. I'm like, okay, if he hits one of these overwhelming barrages, he'll get it. And sure enough, he hits a barrage. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's going to be, one of those days. And then the next two games he didn't, and it was just. In fact, I think I remember him mulling both of those last two games. It was just it was a hard. It's not a deck he wanted to see. It was not a deck he was prepared for. I don't think. I mean, he could prove me wrong and say, yeah, I was totally prepared for that. But it was a fantastic matchup. It felt it, and then it just started snowballing. Like I was expecting the Mother Talzin decks, maybe not the yellow version, but the red version. We had some local players that were on it. I'd seen a lot of it online. I love that matchup. It's a fantastic matchup. I'm able to capitalize, and a lot of them had started taking their bombing runs out because they found out that they were already really good against Vader 4. So they had started trimming the bombing runs, which was another great answer for them in combination with her abilities and some of the other cards that they no longer had because they felt like the only space deck they were going to deal with was Vader 4. So if I remember correctly, it went from Halo Data Vault to, I believe it was a Mother Talzin. I know there was a Boba Fett. I think that was round 5. There's a Boba 4 on Data Vault. Jamie from, I think he said Brazil. I'm sorry if I'm butchering anybody's names along the way, guys. I loved every one of you. We have a super great community, by the way. Everybody was fantastic to play against and were super kind. But I think I had 2 Mother Talzins. I had 2 Hans that day. I lost to Junior from the Boston Network. He was on Quinlan. That was my first loss of the day at 7. And a lot of the Quinlan players I had played in playtesting, they had realized or they had thought that they were the control deck. So they try to control the units more. And I kept squeaking damage in and then they were dead. Junior, I felt like Junior sat down, looked at my deck list and said, I'm just going to race you and it's going to be nothing you can do about it. It's just, and I felt like he was the best Quinlan player I had ever played against. And he just absolutely crushed me. And that was crushing to my soul. And then I got to end the day on another Mother Talzin Red. And I was like, yay, thank you, Lord. So ending the day 7-1 in 4th place was just fantastic feeling. And then day 3 started off great. One of the things, I have played a lot of card games. I have played cards for 25 years now, since almost the beginning of Magic together, which I don't play much of anymore. Star Wars is a better game.
Agreed.
I have just found that a lot of times, even with all the prep, especially if you nail the meta perfectly, you're not always going to play a meta deck. Me, for example, no one sat down expecting to play me. But sometimes it's just the matchups that make the difference. And it's hard when you put all that time and effort and then all of a sudden you don't get the matchups you want. Or sometimes, somebody gets a phenomenal run and they have the matchups. And I just think it's one of the things that sometimes players are too hard on themselves for. And that's why, one of my advice is always play what you know, because you're going to do better with it. Know your meta, and then just have a good time. Have a good time. So I sat down to have a good time, and I did. I
Oh,
had a good time
that's a
because of it.
fun deck, man. This is
It is.
this guy is so fun to play with. Sweet, dude. I think we're skipping question 4 there, Rufus. I think we kind of already talked about that, and I think you've also 5.
Yeah.
So what about the
Efficiency.
MVP? Yeah, what do you think about the MVP card? Like if you had to kind of pick one, like this is never coming out of this list, and
It's
it's
the Falcon.
okay.
I mean, come on, the Millennium Falcon. There's so many times I was able to. They felt like they had a bead, a line on what they were going to do, and it was just like, oh, looky here, it comes into play ready, and oh, guess who's going to jump on it? Han. And then all of a sudden, there's all the ready resources, and their game plan's completely shot because of it.
Yeah, it's
Second MVP,
yeah. Go ahead,
Plo Koon.
give us a bonus. Plo Koon. Okay, let's hear
Plo
about
Koon.
that.
Because what he'd do is, he would slow down the opponent just enough, and he would demand an answer. So he'd take out an opponent and then they'd have to take another swing, so he would end a race. Right, you would think you're racing, now you're not racing. And then if you tried to do something where I could claim and Plo Koon would take care of it, I would be in the same way. It was that 6 damage on the ground that could potentially be 7 because of Han's ability. It added a whole lot of dimension to the deck that I think people get space. Oh my god, there's this huge thing on the ground. It's just going to crush me now.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest innovation that you've kind of brought here is like just not zeroing in on your one game plan over in space and then but like utilizing the really powerful ground units and having them like come in and do a big good thing for you. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's on point. Poe, I had been back and forth on Poe Dameron and the Cassian, and like I couldn't find because I used to keep a spreadsheet until my friend told me about SWU stats, which I need to go do more work with. I used to keep my own Excel spreadsheet of what cards felt like key, what they changed. And I really like it was completely split between Cassian and Poe, which is why I ended up on 2 and 2 as opposed to a 3 and 1, because they both had their purposes and their points. And I won a couple of games day two that if it had been a Cassian instead of a Poe, I wouldn't have done because I could drop the Poe and all of a sudden it just changed the whole aspect of that game. Because if I get a Han trigger, swing with him, plus throw something, that's 9 damage.
Just you're just cooking, man. We're all here to just hear about it, man. We love it. Rufus, you got the next question?
Yeah. I'm gonna piggyback off of that one. Were there any cards that didn't pull their weight?
Felt like someone else had asked me about that. It may have been in the forums. The board was not optimal, but that was kind of a miss on what I thought the meta would be. The Chewbacca's and the Radiant 7, really, I wish they were something different. I most certainly did not peg a Kylo 5 Tarkintown deck, which Migs on that deck demands an immediate answer, or you're just going to be like, "Oh, I'm glad we showed up. It was nice to meet you. Thanks for crushing my face," which is what Ian, Lego Pizza from Boston Network, kindly did multiple rounds. But it was the Migs was just really rough to deal with, and then all of a sudden they flip Kylo and crush your face. But I was really disappointed with those cards. But I expected more blue green villainy. Main deck, man, I felt like I may have nailed that main deck almost perfectly, except for if I knew Kylo Tarkintown and Migs is going to be a thing. I think there probably would have been some kind of ambush on the ground. And probably the best one would have been the X-23 land speeder. Like I think that was,
Okay.
and in fact, someone had asked me. I want to say it was Darth Quickius on the KTOD network. He mentioned it really early, and I was like, "Yeah, this guy's on to it." He's like, "I feel like he knows what's going on." But that would have been if I had a choice, and in fact, I plan on trying that update in there and see if I can keep Han 4 in the meta. I think that card would have been a great addition. But I feel like the main was perfect for that event. The sideboard was probably where some of the misses were. Like I really probably should have ended up on a second bamboozle.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that land spinner seems like a pretty good call into the
Yeah.
MiGs.
Yeah, it hits the MiGs, it sticks around. They can Tarkintown it, but okay, now your Tarkintown's burned.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
if they don't, you got a 2-1 that stays on the ground. And in fact, after thinking about it more, especially after, it would have probably been a great addition just to hit the early drops from Han, anyways, right? So if they drew one of the 2/4s, and instead of having to have the daring raid or the follow-up swoop down, you could hit with the land speeder and Tarkintown it, your guy's still there. Theirs is gone. So now you've held them off the force. You're not going to keep them off the force indefinitely, but if you can buy a couple
Hmm.
of turns where they miss the force and they can't do their next optimal play, you feel light years ahead,
Hmm.
like you've jumped to light speed. Sorry, I had,
Nice.
had to
Oh
throw
yeah,
that one in there.
snuck that in there.
That was good.
Um, so Rufus, are we skipping to 10?
Oh, I just jumped there because
Yeah.
it seemed like it fit with the MVP card going
All
there
right.
to
Well, why don't you ask the
the
next one because I kind of lost track of where we were. So, what do you think's next?
um so if you were to run the deck again, what would you change?
Definitely the X-23 land speeder, and I think that one's
Yes,
a huge
that
one.
one.
Um, my friend Jeremy Skelton from Cookville, he had mentioned the commence patrols out of the board as a great way, especially because for the Kylo Tarkintown deck where they get that one heroic resolve, and now Anakin's doing -3 twice. You can do the commence patrol to make a 2/2 X-wing and put that heroic resolve back in the deck. So now it's only hitting for that. So it gives you another kind of early drop that can interact and play another space unit. I'm going to definitely want to test that one out and see how I feel about that. You got to
Yeah.
watch the even numbers with the deck, and if you get too high on the
Mhm.
even numbers, you definitely got to take the never tell me the odds and turn them into open fires. The math on never tell me the odds leading into that event was, I don't know if you guys play any dice games. I love Blood Bowl, huge Blood Bowl fan, and
It's a
it's
good
it's a
one.
risk management game. Nothing's safe, nothing's safe in that game. So never tell me the odds is a lot like rolling a d6. On a one, you did 3 or less damage. on a 2, 3, or 4, or maybe even a 2 or 3, you did 4 damage, so as good as an open fire. On a 4 and a 5, you did 5 damage, and on a 6, you did 6 damage. Would you play that, or would you play open the fire? And realistically, so many games, Never Tell Me the Odds was way better than open fire. Did I ever have that bite me in the butt during the tournament? No. Could it have? There was a couple of turns it potentially could have, but when you look at the average deck, most decks had around 26.5 even cost cards, and then the 23.5 odd cost cards. And so I just averaged it up to 27 and 23 and did the math from there.
Hmm.
And that's where I got, it's like rolling a D6. And, my Blood Bowl self was like, yeah, because the added bonus did come into play multiple times during the tournament.
Can you
And there's a
remember
couple
any of
times.
those examples where like you needed the what an open fire wouldn't have given you to like take out an important unit? Do you remember anything like
Well,
that?
it was never, when I play it, I was never counting on it doing more than 4.
Yeah.
But there was times you could play it, and if it did more than 4, you had a better target. And
Okay.
that's where it was advantageous. In fact, there was a game where one of the Han Blue players had played a Kaya, but they also had a Grogu out, a fully healed Grogu, but they had a just damaged Kaya, and I was like, "Look, never tell me the odds. I'll either get the Kai, and they won't be able to use the Grogu, or wow, we hit all 6, get rid of the Grogu."
Okay.
Nice.
I think this is another one that I think you are kind of blazing trails on is playing this card in that list. Although it seems like they intended for this card to be used in this deck, like the game designers, but
Mhm.
that wasn't really actually what was happening. So,
I
kudos to
mean,
you for throwing it in there.
fun fact, it was the last card changed at the last moment. I had registered because you had to put in your deck list an hour before like 8 p.m. Pacific time, if I remember correctly. It was 11 Eastern. And so I had like right up at like 7:10, I still had the 2 open fires main and then Never Tell Me in the side. And I sat back down and I was like, no, no, no. Trust your gut, trust your math. That's what you tell people all the time. And so I switched it back and I was happy all tournament long I had.
That's great, man.
Awesome.
Um, all right. So I think that's, that's pretty much it.
I got another one.
You got another one?
Yeah, so you do have one even costed card in the deck, which is C3PO. You want to talk a little bit about him?
I mean, yes. If you don't realize the ability that is there, that card is dumb. It basically says, "Play me, draw a card. Attack with me, draw a card." And there is some lines of play there that I don't know if everybody recognizes. One of my favorite tricks early on to do was if I'm in a race that's close and I'm not entirely sure I can win that race, you would activate the Han and you would reveal something that would be really juicy, but you didn't really have to have it right then and there, but they may think you did. And instead of attacking with the C3PO so you could draw it, you could really basically leave the card on top of your deck to prevent X amount of damage because they would absolutely take out the C3PO. I mean, the number of times I flipped over like a good card and I was like, yeah, I want that, but I don't have to have it this turn. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm just gonna put that back on top and swing with the ship. And you sometimes you get the extra point of damage because of it. But then C3PO was there and you knew you were never gonna get the card because they were just eyeing that C3PO, and you're like, yeah, thanks, bud. I appreciate you taking the hit for me.
Sort of just baiting him into making him a sentinel kind of thing.
Yeah, and,
That's
and
cool.
it would. He would soak up so much damage. I was trying to remember. There's one of the matchups that, man, I really need to grab my life pad. And I'm sorry, guys. I should have looked at that before I did this. I'll blame the space crud. Coming back from Cloud 9, I picked it up on my way up there. So, but there was one of those matchups where I absolutely think the opponent misplayed, where they should have went after me, but C3PO was there, and the top card was a Plo Koon, and they were like, "Oh no, you don't need that this turn." Like, I'm pretty sure it was a Han flip turn, but I was okay hitting with it next turn. And so I left it on top and didn't swing with the C3PO. I swung with one of the ships, and they absolutely just demolished C3PO. And I was like, and there's 4 points of damage saved. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, I just kind of like want to know about your future, your next steps, and maybe we can kind of close with that. Is sort of like, is this your guy? Is this your deck? Like your ride or die? Like you're just gonna keep innovating with him, or are you more of like it's just about the thrill of just spiking an event with the rogue deck, like kind of guy.
So my wife, she, she didn't know it was going to be televised, and one of my friends let her know that it's televised. It was on YouTube, and so she started watching, and she heard them say, never tell Matt the odds, and she laughed. She goes, "Oh, that's very much one of his style decks. No one's expecting what he's doing." And it's not so much that being off meta is important, because I'll play an on meta deck if I think it's the right call for the weekend that is in play. But I think there is something to be said for having the element of surprise. And while I would love for Han 4 to continue to be a thing, because if you haven't played the deck, you really should. It is a blast to play. It is so much fun.
It's-
Maybe if you're not if you're not prepared for Kylo into Migs, that's terrible. Thanks, Bill Burr. But it is. No, I love Bill Burr. I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding. But in the card game, it wasn't that fun. It's just one of those things that for that weekend, without that being a known piece of the meta, testing, how I could test. I was a lone wolf for the longest. I did most of this testing myself, me and my spreadsheet, finding the spots in the meta. That's always one of the things I've been really good at, right, in my card career, is being able to say, this is the meta. These are the pillars of the meta. Here's how I want to attack it. And, Han had lined up for that. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Han. Han's one of the best characters in Star Wars. So it was great getting to play the character I loved. But I also know from every other card game, every other game I've ever played, resource advantage is always huge. And if you can find some way to capitalize on resource advantage, you're gonna be light years ahead, or you're gonna jump to light speed. I had to do it again. Sorry, guys. But you had that advantage there, and you could really push it home. And so many times, opponents would think they were in games until that flip turn, and then they would realize they were not in that game at all. It just looked that way because that extra 5 was huge.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I plan on continuing to attack the game the way I always have. Hopefully, I'll pick up some new friends along the way. Um, find a team that would love to have my skill set and utilize that, because I'm definitely a team player. But I plan on continuing doing what I do best for this game and enjoying myself while I do it. And being qualified for Galactics next year is a huge advantage, right? I already know I'm headed there, so
Well, I think
that's the
you're
plan.
you're a hot commodity for the teams out there. I think anybody
yeah,
will be lucky to
it
have
was an
you.
amazing run and an amazing deck.
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that because we have a team now, but just saying, just throwing it out there, just in case you'd be interested. But
Oh,
anyhow,
I,
man,
I need to get over this.
this has been awesome, and again, just absolute legendary run, dude. So cool. I think everybody's just like
Yeah.
really excited for this video and this interview and to hear your thoughts and all that good stuff. So, any last thoughts out there from either of you?
I want to I want to say thank you for letting me be on the show. I truly appreciate that, because I want to get back to this community. It has been fantastic. I mean, if you haven't had a chance to go to a big Star Wars event, do it. It is a blast. I mean, I don't know where your card backgrounds are, but don't let previous card experiences keep you away from Star Wars Unlimited. Fantastic game, my favorite of all time, and I've played a bunch. Also, I have to just say thank you to the local Knoxville guys that let me crash with them in Vegas. Um, I was, back and forth on whether I was even going to go, because I was afraid of the cost, being by myself and doing that. I had hooked up with some of my friends from Cookville, but Mason and Lucas, they said, "Hey, we got a room. We'd love to split with you." And they hooked my friend Blake up. We split the cost on that. That was wonderful. Um, I will end on this right here. Love my kiddos and my family. Please don't neglect your family to play cards. They're more important. I appreciate mine giving me an extra week of just letting me test. That made a huge difference. And I just thank you again, guys, for letting me be on there. And thank you to the community for being so wonderful.
All right. Now, if you made it this far, you're my hero.